Subscribe for more nonsense like this, and also streams every weekend on Game Dev or Indie Games or whatever the fuck I feel like actually. Would you believe me if I said that the inspiration for this was not Split Fiction at all, but in fact was, this? Multiplayer game. One of the best things that video games offer, because they turn something that would be interactive on an individual level into something that's now interactive individually and socially as well. They've come in many forms throughout the years, online or otherwise, but many have centered around one thing: competition. These are great. They create experiences where you can look at your friend next to you with fire in your eyes or be toxic as hell in that Discord call. But the thing that seems to be somewhat lost to time is the art of cooperative multiplayer games. Strictly competitive multiplayer games are just simply more common now than ever before. They're easier to build off of and create unique interactions with your friends and the people around you. But what about the ones that are meant to be cooperative? The games that may have single player or competitive elements, but are designed with multiple players working together in mind. Well, that's what we're exploring today. Some of my personal favorites in the genre, and well, the games that tell you to work with your friends whether you like it or not. Cooperative multiplayer, especially the non-PvP, heavily online kind, is something I've been wishing was a lot more common in the modern day. They always create unbelievably interesting player dynamics that make for some of the most memorable moment-to-moment gameplay. Take New Super Mario Bros. Wii and the one on the console that's only good for Nintendo Land at this point. These are two very flavorless 2D platformers with not a lot to say, but throw in 3 or more players and suddenly the game goes from the most 7 out of 10 ever to a cooperative battleground where patience will be tested. Laughter, screaming, oh shit moments will be abundant as that dickhead friend runs ahead taking control of the camera when all you want is to grab the star coin that's sitting in plain sight. Add player interactions like stomping on each other's head and being able to pick each other up and throw each other, and the game transforms itself from a snooze fest of a platformer to one of the most chaotic multiplayer experiences we got pre-2013. At the same time though, the cooperative aspect is in full effect, with the star coins and collectibles being there to add to that. The addition of multiple players mean you're able to bounce off each other and do things that you just couldn't otherwise. Fuck yourself over and you can't get the star coin normally anymore? Just use your friend as a step stool and suddenly your problem is solved. If you're feeling, you know, you can always just test the fear of death and jump for the star coin and bubble to your friend to save you from your demise. There's a lot more cool shit that you can do when you're actually trying to work together, and you can very much tell these games were designed with co-op in mind. In single player, these games are as bland, sterilized, and on autopilot as Mario gets, but adding multiplayer turns the not so new soup into something worth a damn. The multiplayer of Mario is definitely not for everyone either, which is perfectly fine. It vastly depends on the friend groups and individual tasks for whether or not these games will be fun for you. But these games do provide a look into the mindsets that games have to be in to make multiplayer work for their games. See, in game design, especially when it comes to things involving multiple players, designing mechanics is all about striking a balance between two sides. What's unfair and fair, too skilled versus too luck-oriented, competition versus cooperation. When one goes too far in one direction, it can be very hard for the multiplayer to feel well thought out. In the context of cooperative multiplayer, one of my favorite flavors of mechanical balance, and the one that I'm going to be talking about the most in this video, is when the balance between competitiveness and cooperation looks something like this. Working together is largely incentivized, but you can very much get away with just throwing your friend off of a cliff if you want to. It's why Mario's kinda slightly new soup, and especially the offerings in Mario Maker, are so much more fun for me in multiplayer. The unique interactions only possible with more people creates such a hilarious, toxic dynamic with the right people. I know a lot of people aren't a fan, but I really like the more involved player interactions in game. They're missing in Mario Mario Wonder, and while that game is peak 2D Mario, I think the choice to make players not really interact with each other in multiplayer is kinda lame. I'm glad they incentivize screwing with each other for a crown. It promotes some very toxic and creative decision making to send your friend into an early grave, but I don't know, I like the interactivity present in past games. When you're not trying to create a reason for your friend to spit in your food, these mechanics heavily promote cooperation to do things you otherwise couldn't, and I think a lot of that was lost in translation to Wonder. However, for some reason, Mario's peak multiplayer experience for me was the one that made the choice to make an Italian man a fucking cat. Mario 3D World's multiplayer is essentially a direct translation into 3D of the multiplayer in the new Super Mario Bros. Games, but with a lot of minor tweaks. Characters have different traits now, and most notably, we're in 3D now, so there's a lot more room to move around. The camera ain't perfect, obviously, and there was no way in hell they were gonna get a camera not to be jank with 4 bumbling idiots running around. Some of the levels also don't feel like they're made with multiplayer in mind 100% of the time. But what can you do? We're not all winners. Do you know what console this is on? We still got all the interactivity of the 2D entries of the past though, and more. Shared lives, picking up and throwing your friends, bouncing off each other, all things that exist to level the balance between cooperation and competitiveness. So much so that the scale would look probably something like this. But there's one mechanic that makes 3D World a fucking all-timer in terms of its multiplayer, and it's a little thing called the crown. Basically, at the end of each level, players are ranked by how many points everyone had, with the winner getting a crown above their head. And it's mostly just for show, but the thing is, you can lose the crown by dying, getting it knocked off your head, or getting hit by an enemy. And also, having the crown at the end of the level gives you a little extra bump to your overall score. This single mechanic turns what would be a game where cooperation was more incentivized than fucking with each other, since there's more to collect than ever before, into a game where you're trying to work together, but you're also looking for every opportunity to be on top at the end of it all. It creates a deeply entertaining dynamic between every player involved that only got enhanced further because it's in 3D too. 3D World just hits that cooperative balance where you can do some cool shit if you want to, or you can make a friend your worst enemy if you want to. It just gives a lot of opportunities for unique player expression. One game that kinda scratches the same itch but leans way more into the cooperative side of things was honestly the inspiration for this video. Despite a less than stellar reputation in its community, the legacy of Metroid Prime Federation Force being known as the game that absolutely no one wanted, let alone played, coming out at the worst time to a resounding it's so just unfortunate really. The game itself is genuinely great. So much so that if you look up the definition of an underrated gem, the result is just this game. It's a pretty fun multiplayer shooter where you go through levels to do pretty basic shooter objectives with a Metroid theme. I got to play it with 4 friends pretty recently, and it was genuinely so much fun. You genuinely have to work together to get through some of these missions, the bonus objectives especially, but at the same time, you're still competing to get more points than your teammates, since you're rewarded with first pick at mods at the end of every level. It creates a dynamic where you gotta lock in for real, since you're trying to communicate as if it was a PvP game at times, but then there's other times where you're purposely hoping your teammate kicks the bucket or gets brutally injured so you can get points for reviving or healing them. Cooperation is definitely the main goal here though, and the levels are definitely designed with 4 players in mind. I genuinely do not know how the hell you're supposed to do any of this with less than 4 people. And if you're on your own, what are you doing? Play something else. But in the right setting, Federation Force is fucking awesome. You get a little bit of competitiveness, but a whole lot of working with your friends. Dude, can this guy talk about anything that isn't fucking Nintendo? fine, sure. Let's look at the game about making a child cry because the parents just can't get along. It Takes Two is one of those games that I just wish we saw more of in the modern day. A purely co-op puzzle platformer where it's just a blast of ideas for like 12 hours straight. It's unbelievably accessible too. It's on pretty much every platform right now, and only one person has to own the game. Dude, these devs fucking revived DS download play. That's fucking awesome. In terms of the actual game, It Takes Two and the devs' recent game Split Fiction are purely cooperative titles. Where you can find ways to kill your partner, sure, I guess, but like, you are always working together to move forward. I haven't actually gotten to play Split Fiction yet, so I'm mainly working on assumptions based off footage and my experience with It Takes Two. I'm also mainly talking about the funny divorce game here, but these games have to balance something different than something like 3D World because of the focus on cooperation. It Takes Two design works on the foundation of balancing and creating mechanics that are equally fun for each player. If one player has a gun of sorts, the other is shooting sap on the floor to see the world explode. If one person is a hammer, the other person is throwing nails for the hammer to swing across. And that list gets very extensive very quickly. It's an asymmetrical design that defines most of these mechanics, with the sole focus being to make each side equally engaging and fun to play. In terms of It Takes Two, the game has a pretty damn good success rate for striking that balance. But in general, I'd say that if you're playing as Mei, you typically get the cooler of the two activities. Look man, having a fucking scythe is so much cooler than Cody throwing it back. It's still very good. If you want a co-op game, It Takes Two, and I assume Split Fiction as well, are some of the best on offer since they are literally designed with two people working together in mind. But that's the thing, there's just not many games that are explicitly cooperative multiplayer anymore. Ones that are well known by general audiences anyways, that are built explicitly with the intention of having multiple players work together to overcome some challenge that isn't just be better than another set of players on an opposing side. Your options range from select Nintendo games, and then from there we get pretty scarce. Side excursions that have you work together are pretty common, but rarely is explicitly co-op ever the focus. There's not many games like It Takes Two nowadays is what I'm getting at here, at least in the AAA space. And it can honestly be hard to realize that fact, because co-op exists in some facet in tons of games. It's just more rare to have a game that can barely function without a second player being present. And that's because, well, tell me, have you ever fallen for an eternity? I'm not sure if I've conveyed this fact properly throughout the video this far, but it is very hard to make a multiplayer game work. Whether they're cooperative, competitive, or a mix of both, it takes a solid understanding of mechanics and design to make it work properly. On the cooperative side of things, the rarity of games dedicated to this style comes from an added handicap that we'll get to in a second. Design-wise, they're just hard to get right. Getting a level or a game to work with one player is hard enough. Adding two or more is just kinda witchcraft type shit. But honestly, what's harder sometimes is adding a cooperative multiplayer set of mechanics on top of an existing single player game. It's one of those things that can work really well and be loved by many, or be whatever this is. There's always some new restriction or added mechanic to the game to accommodate multiple players. Whether it be difficulty adjustments or keeping both players alive until everyone dies without reviving each other. It's extra rules put in place so that the game doesn't fall apart the second another player decides they want to participate in Luigi's Gooey House 3. But a lot of these games are just less interesting to me. It's very easy to fuck up, but some just work in co-op really well by default, and it really just depends on a game-to-game basis. What I've been getting at here thus far in the video, and what I truly miss, are the games that exist for a cooperative experience, not to be something else as well. Creating a cooperative multiplayer game from the ground up is a more interesting hurdle, since as I said, you have to design scenarios that are fun for two or more people. It's not a, oh, this could play perfectly without multiple people. It's a, man, I would be doing backflips off the Empire State if you made me do this alone. But at the same time, you can't just tell two people to work together either. There has to be a personal incentive, which is why designing something like this is so hard. And as I discussed earlier, using Mario and Federation Force, finding that balance can be very difficult, but it can also make for some of the most engaging gameplay if done right. And then with that mechanical balance, you also gotta design levels and scenarios that are suited for the game, and around the idea of multiple people playing, which poses challenges in and of itself. For example, take Zelda Four Swords Adventures, a game that definitely has a sense of competitiveness at its core, but you're still intended to work together to solve puzzles and make it to the end of each level. It's at its best when the puzzles are simpler in scope, and it feels as though you're constantly moving forward. But what if they throw a long fuck-ass puzzle in a village where the pace slows to a fucking crawl, and then whoops, I closed the game? It's a major pace breaker, and for me and my friends was what killed our run of what was otherwise a very fun experience. It's one of those levels that might be fun for a single person, but in a game where you could see that you are in fact doing better than your friends, it feels out of sync with what the rest of the game wants to be. And that's what I mean when I say you have to be careful when designing for multiple players. What's fun for one person might not necessarily be fun for multiple people. It's why something like It Takes Two succeeds so much at what it sets out to do. The competitive edge on display is the dullest it could be, but the cooperative side is turned up to 11, and you can tell that there was a lot of thought that went into designing these scenarios. It's the same reason that the Portal 2 co-op is as good as it is as well. They built an entirely new campaign of puzzles meant for two people, and in both games, ones that are very different in nature, everything these games do stay in line with the rest of their respective games. But the reason cooperative multiplayer in the way I'm talking about has been nothing more than a side thing is much more than just something to do with the design. First, it's just easier to make a single player game first. You get the most amount of people interested in the game that way. The second thing is, and this is kind of tied to the first, is accessibility. If you want to play either of the two multiplayer Zeldas, good luck setting that shit up legally or morally gray. Want to play the multiplayer Kirby Metroidvania? It was trapped on the GBA outside of emulation before Nintendo added it to its shoddy online service. Federation Force? Literally my only issue with that game is that it is stuck on the 3DS. These are extreme cases, but if it's not one of the many free-to-play, highly competitive team-based shooters or something, cooperative multiplayer normally hinges on either multiple people owning the same game or being in the same vicinity as each other, which isn't always doable. It's why something like It Takes Two was able to thrive. Not having to buy a separate copy of the game so you can play with your friend makes the game so much easier to actually be able to find someone to play with. The popularity and the larger saturation of competitive multiplayer games is kind of why we don't see a ton of games. See, the more competitive games, ones that have cooperative elements, such as team-based shooters, are just more popular. People just really enjoy feeling better than other people, and it just also makes for some very fun player dynamics, and also toxic ones. The successful ones also make a lot of money, like an absolute shit ton of money. Like, what if we had a really successful game and then closed down the AAA studio that made this game type money? The title of this video is almost a lie. I do not miss cooperative multiplayer games. They really never left, and co-op is a common feature of hundreds of big-name games. However, I do think there is something to be said about how uncommon it is to find dedicated cooperative multiplayer games in the modern day. In just the puzzle or platformer genre alone, it allows for some of the most creatively designed scenarios games can give, and also provide an entirely different social dynamic to players. I am glad that we've been getting a lot more games that are built to suit all types of players. Games like Mario 3D World or the 2D games being very fun single player titles is awesome, but being designed with multiplayer in mind makes them great options when you have multiple people around. We also live in an age where PvP is pretty normalized, especially in a team-based turn-based scenario, which scratches a similar itch. We're very much covered in terms of games that just feature co-op, but is not the main focus. But I very much yearn for games like It Takes Two, Split Fiction, or Metroid Prime Federation Force. Federation Force and the multiplayer Zeldas also just depress me because they either get absolutely ripped to shreds by the fans for coming out at a bad time, or come out on a failed console with the least accessible method of play I have ever seen in my goddamn life. They are such a unique design challenge for developers to get over, and of the ones that I've played, provide some next level kind of memories with my friends that I wouldn't be able to get otherwise. The best ones also let me chuck my friends off a cliff and then get rewarded for doing so too. And sorry guys, that's just peak game design actually. Hi everyone, thank you all so much for making it to the end of the video. If you like my content, consider subscribing, and if you're interested, there's a chance that I'm live on YouTube right now, or will be at some point later in the week or later in the day, so come hang out with me. You can also keep up with me over on Blue Sky for updates on whatever I'm working on. I've been all over the place with this script and life is so unbelievably busy, but I'm glad that I was able to get this out before the 6 months went by. Like, the output I've had in the last 5 months is fucking absurd. And frankly, I honestly didn't know if I was going to be able to do it all in a reasonable time frame. But we made it through, and I'm excited to move on to new things. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'm going to go back to Balatro and Risk of Rain or something. No, fucking no. Bye-bye.